This is the Encounter Faith Podcast. My name is Ross, and I'm so glad you're here, dear listener, because I'm sitting down with my friend Alex. Alex, welcome to the podcast. Thanks for saying yes.
Thanks for having me, Ross.
Now, you and I met probably a little over a year ago, and I want to just get this out of the way. I want to put the rumors to bed, because you are someone who loves Encounter Christmas.
Yes.
more than I'd say most people, and a lot of people listening love. Yeah, a lot of people listening love Encounter Christmas. If you're not a part of Good Shepherd, Encounter Christmas is a annual Christmas concert. It's a free offering that we put out to the community as a way to give folks time to pause and celebrate Jesus. And when I first heard that part of your story, which we'll get into a little bit more as we talk today, I was like, man, that's exactly who Encounter Christmas is for. So by way of introduction, can you let people know a little bit about you and why Encounter Christmas was like the thing for you in that time of your life?
So Encounter Christmas 2024 was my first time ever attending Good Shepherd. And I was at a point in my life where, truthfully, I was very confused and not in a great headspace. And I was all over the place. The classic example, you look at someone, you're like, they're a little bit of a mess. You know, they need to get it together just a bit.
Sure.
And I was fortunate enough to have one of my best friends, if not my best friend, I can't pick favorites, Quinn Farrell, who plays for Good Shepherd, and off and on now who knows where he is in life, but
it's wherever he is, he's lifting something heavy right now.
Yes, of course. Really heavy. And he invited me, and he's invited me on different occasions to see him play at church. And I've heard him play the piano all the time on phone calls and times we've played games. He's a musical dude. I know he's talented, and I always wanted to go support him. Something this time he asked me to go, and I was fed up with religion, truthfully. I had grown up in a Catholic sort of environment on my mom's side. My dad was a practicing Hindu.
Okay.
So I was baptized in the Catholic Church. I remember nothing about it other than I didn't like it.
Sure.
And on Saturdays, every once in a while, we went to a Hindu temple around Naperville, which, you know, you get very different sorts of views about life and religion.
Yeah.
Similar themes, but different approaches. And that sort of battle made me not enjoy religion, this idea. And I'm as we said before we started, I'm a very analytical dude. I like concrete answers and concrete facts, and I was not getting that. And it was not helpful, and it was frustrating me because I knew in my heart from when I was a kid, I would always say, you know, there's something out there. I don't know what it is, but I think there's something out there, because life is too special for us to be just some, you know, cells in a random rock. Yeah. So I just didn't, but I didn't know. Yeah. I had all these questions, but I didn't know I had questions. I was confused and I was scared, and I didn't know what was going on. And my parents divorced, and that sort of made me more confused and, you know, truthfully a little bit ashamed as well. And so kind of going back to what you're saying, Encounter Christmas 2024, my parents, you know, are fresh out of their divorce. My mom had just remarried. My dad was attempting to see lots of women, you know, living his bachelor life. And I was just lost and confused. And on outside of the family space, you know, I was not, you know, I couldn't find good relationships with women.
Sure.
And it was hard for me to make new friends. And I'm very grateful for the amazing best friends I have. But, you know, I'm a social dude. I'm always trying to talk to people, and I was struggling to do that.
Right.
And I was in the middle of this intense job search. I graduated from college in May of 2024, and I was applying for all these software engineering jobs. In 7 months, I didn't have anything. And I was, I don't know if you knew this part, I was 2 weeks away from joining the Marines.
Oh, wow.
So I had a folder in my backpack with my birth certificate, my high school diploma, and everything. And I was
You're right. Yeah.
I was going.
Sure.
So
you use the phrase classic example of someone earlier, right? Describing like classic example of someone with life as a mess. And what I really appreciate about you as a person is as you share those things, and I'm grateful that you did, that looks more like the conventional, this person is overwhelmed or having, because I think sometimes what happens is we sensationalize stories, right? Nothing in your story involved you being in a ditch anywhere physically, right?
No.
And yet I think what can often be missed in a church, particularly in a church context like Good Shepherd, where you are surrounded by so many people who have not only been Christ followers all their lives, have been at Good Shepherd for all of their lives. You actually kind of forget that messes actually look a lot more like what you looked like at that time.
Yeah.
Which is you had some parts of your life outwardly, it was making sense. A lot of inward stuff wasn't. And there was a lot of stuff that you were trying to juggle to keep your head above water. But I think part of why I wanted to talk to you is we're in this series about claimed by God. And when I think about what it means to be claimed by God, I think about stories like yours, because you're someone who did the work. You were very investigative in the different way you tried to pursue that. Like you were saying earlier, like there's something out there. What is this thing? But one of the questions I want to ask you based off kind of the first part of your story, being in a Catholic experience sometimes and being in a Hindu experience sometimes created a sense of turmoil in you that I think doesn't actually have a ton to do with Catholic or Hindu orthodoxy.
Yeah.
And has a lot to do with what the implicit messages you're receiving by being in an environment, like being in different environments like that. Now, spoiler alert, Alex has been a part of Good Shepherd for a long time and he's very happy to be here and has an awesome girlfriend and all the things you'd hope for, Alex, dear listeners. You've already fallen in love with him. I'm curious, what are some of the messages that you receive being a part of a community like this that are different than what you felt like you were picking up as a kid?
That's a good question. So something I feel that Good Shepherd gave me, actually is the number one thing I tell everyone other than feeling the love of Jesus, is that the sense of community and belongingness. And really community is the word I love to use because I feel safe talking to you, Ross,
Sure.
And we met just a year ago. When I was younger, because there was this conflict and turmoil of, there's one way I'm looking over here in this Catholic way and Hindu over here, I had a natural distrust for religion and the people involved because I'm hearing something one way, I'm hearing something the other. I don't feel like I can get real on like a deep level with any of this.
Right.
If it's that conflicting.
Right. Because both, and again, this has nothing to do with, this is all just a human thing, not really about this, where you're being told by two groups of people that they're right and the other one is wrong, and having to wrestle with the natural questions that come from that. That's an oversimplification, but like it makes sense that that's not a peaceful environment for you.
And on top of that, both my parents, so my mom was definitely more of a, as you said earlier, a Creaster type
Christmas and Easter Catholic, sure.
Catholic, and we'd go every once in a while. And I even altar served a couple of times. And then my dad was very much the Creaster equivalent of a Hindu.
Yeah.
So we were also not super deep in it either on either side. So I'm looking at my parents like, if you guys aren't fully in this, how does that make me feel as a child? So
in this, to kind of bring it back to your story in a chronological way, you're someone who hits this point where if you're not finding a gig, if you're not having something change in your life, you're going to go to the Marines, which is a classic story within the military community.
Yeah.
A sense of purpose given. It makes sense that you hit there. When you walk into Encounter, I imagine it's not necessarily this like watershed 180, you hear choirs and angels and rainbows are coming out of Ryan Hammer. It's probably something a little bit more gradual, but what do you remember, or in looking back, what can you identify felt different from that first initial Christmas concert experience?
The first thing I remember from Encounter Christmas, and I will not forget this, was sitting I was texting Quinn, obviously he's on the stage, behind stage. Right. I'm there alone. I don't know what's going on. And I sit in the very back, even though he told me to sit in the middle because it's the best audio. I wish I sat in the middle because I'm the biggest Encounter Christmas fan. But I'm in the back, and Ryan Hammer comes up to me with Quinn, and he introduces himself, gives me a hug, and immediately, if you have any questions about anything, I want to talk about it. And I jumped straight in. I asked him, I don't remember what I asked him, but it was something faith related. Great. So I jumped straight into, I got my questions. I'm trying to hit you. And I wish I remember what I said, but what the content wasn't important. The idea was I was pressing him a little bit,
Right before he's about to sing some big Christmas concert. Yes. You meet a guy who has some semblance. It's funny to say this about Ryan Hammer for those of you who know him, but some sense of religious authority.
Yes.
And you get a chance to ask questions, which is what I hope people know, regardless of where you're at with this walk with Jesus thing. There's a level of, we'll use like time and a place that makes Alex's story unique to a certain extent. But ultimately what Ryan wants is for anyone who feels that way to come ask him those questions and to bring that's, I think, something that people it's a narrative that collectively we get wrong about church on any level, where we go like, oh, I have to have step one together before I can go to step two.
Yeah. They talk about, you don't take a shower when you're already clean, right?
Sure.
That's the one I heard. So I was not clean.
Yeah, that's good.
I was ready to take a shower.
Nice. Okay. So you're asking Hammer questions. He's responding right before he leads this big Christmas concert.
But his enthusiasm to talk to me was really something.
Sure.
It was really something. And I met LJ that day as well.
Speaking of enthusiasm.
Yes. And she is impossible to not get joy from. It like amazing.
No, I mean, I mean that quite literally, that like if LJ and I had different ethics, I would be finding ways to monetize LJ's joy. just confessing to you, dear listener, about how much I believe in how God uniquely created that person. But please continue.
She has that natural energy. So I'm sitting and I'm listening to this music now, and I never really listened to Christmas music. I knew about some of the I don't even know the names, but the All I Want for Christmas Is You, Mariah Carey, right? Those types of songs. But I didn't know much of anything else. And I'm sitting here, and prior to that, I'm a big rap music guy. And prior to coming to Encounter Christmas, I was struggling with a drug addiction for a long time. Really long time. And I don't know what it is. I call it the power of God in Christ. But I mean, I spend every single day high for the better part of 9 years. Easily.
Okay.
And I went to Encounter Christmas in 2024 sober. And I went to everything under the influence of a little something, So something about that also stuck with me, because I also wasn't there's addiction. You crave things. It's hard. And I did not feel that at church. That was something I really, really stuck with me, because sobriety was something, if anyone is familiar, you try, you fail, you try, you fail. You just keep trying, and you eventually hope it sticks. And then you may fail again, but then you just keep trying. It's a lifelong battle.
Yep.
So I was at Encounter Christmas, I was sober, and I was hearing this music, and I was enjoying it. I was getting I'm texting Quinn as he's on stage. I know he's not reading my phone, and I'm literally texting him, man, the glockenspiel just set the mood, right? And I'm jamming out back there, having a blast.
Yeah.
And still,
number one. Episode title, glockenspiel set the mood.
I'm telling you, glockenspiel brought me to Christ. If it wasn't Christ, it was something. If it wasn't Quinn, it was something else. Glockenspiel brought me to Christ, and I will stand on that.
I love that.
So I am listening, I'm loving it, and I had Quinn just conveniently left out the part where there's a little bit of a sermon in there, you know, because if you said that to me, I wasn't showing up.
Of course.
And so now Pastor Tara Beth comes into the equation, and I felt like she was speaking directly to me. And
sure.
It touched my soul. And I'm there and I'm sober, and I know that I'm sober, and I'm listening to this and I'm feeling things, and I am dialed in listening to this sermon, and it eventually ends, and I'm like, whoa, wait a minute. I liked that. We could have kept going.
Yep.
Music starts. I'm back to enjoying it. And of course it ends. Encounter is awesome. Lights, music, everything. Gotta go. And I talk with Quinn after, and he's like, you know, what do you think? And I'm like, dude, that was something. That was something. And you're right. It wasn't a 180 thing, but it planted seeds in me that I think grew into what I am today.
100%. What I want to ask about in the context of that, I really appreciate you sharing and being open about you coming into that experience, dealing with addiction, you come into that experience mentally where you're at, and the initial kind of respite sensation of what that one night felt like, for a couple of reasons. First and foremost, I think there's a theology of healing that I think sometimes we get wrong, which is this idea that in order for it to be healing, it has to be this instantaneous. I was the woman who bled for 12 years, right? And obviously God does that, and God does that often. But I think it blots out the type of healing that you experience, type of healing I've experienced in my life through things like dealing with chronic pain, which is the walking with Jesus is actually what brings the healing. And in that sort of beginning chapter, you realize that actually there's a better story.
Yeah.
Because my assumption is, even at the height of your addictive behaviors, every other person who I've ever talked to about sobriety would tell me, I knew that this wasn't great.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
But you didn't know the cliche here being, you know, when John 10:10 Jesus talks about life to the full, you knew that life to the full existed, but you didn't know where to find it.
I didn't know how to get there. I didn't know what steps to take, but I did know you have an awareness what you're doing is wrong.
Yeah.
On the human level.
And what I'm curious about in that is there's an inherent shame that comes with that, particularly because for a lot of folks who wind up addicted to anything, the addictive behavior becomes less and less about a high and more about feeling normal or numbing the behavior or numbing the negative emotions or whatever. What I'm curious about is, you talked about genuine community. You talked about the way that felt like Tara Beth is speaking to your soul. How do you contrast sort of where you were at and the shame nature of how you were responding to life around you? Because when I hear you talk about connection, like, I can see your face light up. I can see you immediately go back there to how good it felt to text Quinn while he's up there about the glockenspiel.
Yep.
And to me, that's the type of thing that I think people miss about church a lot of the time, which is that's the power of the Holy Spirit in living into your identity and living into who made you. Immediately take some scales off your eyes, to use a biblical metaphor, but it doesn't mean that you're all of a sudden Pastor Alex.
No, and to this day, I love to tell people, because I have a lot of people around me who are not Christian and who lived that life with me for a long time.
Right.
And they talk to me and they ask me really hard questions, and I tell them, you know, I'm not equipped to deal with that, but come to my Bible study, you know, come to church with me and just get it for yourself, man. I'm telling you, it's amazing. And
I love that. And it's very obviously a part of who you are. What I'm curious about with one of the things you experienced that you just brought it up is with that Bible study. Now, for folks who listen to this podcast, the Rubens are not, are known entities, but can you talk about the difference between having a kind of, I'll use the phrase like more open and deeper friendship and relationship with someone like Quinn versus walking in as a person who is beginning to be changed in a context of a bunch of people who my guess is you knew maybe two of them. Like,
I didn't know any of them.
Great. Yeah. So you didn't know any of them. How did you get connected to that Bible study?
So I'm going to rewind just a little bit. So after Encounter Christmas, I did not show up to church every Sunday. It was not an immediate 180, but I was thinking about it. Mm-hmm. And again, another time, Quinn is like, hey, I'm playing this Sunday. This is, a couple months after. And I'm like, you know what? Let me go check it out.
Right. What Alex is leaving out is he did listen to the Encounter Christmas stream on YouTube quite a bit, yes. Which as the person who has to monitor those analytics, I really appreciate it.
Yes. So I did. Yes, that is actually an incredibly important part to the story. Mm-hmm. After Encounter Christmas, he told me it's uploaded on YouTube, and I work in a boring office, and I have my headphones on, and I added Encounter Christmas to my YouTube music playlist.
Yep. And
he would come on, and every time it'd come on, I'd send Quinn a text and be like, hey man, Encounter Christmas, still the #1 fan.
Thanks for listening. We'll be right back.
Hey, if you're listening to the Encounter Faith podcast, something I know about you is you want to dive deep. Maybe you are someone who's been following Jesus for a long time. Maybe you're someone who has a lot of questions and you're looking everywhere for the right answers. Either way, the Good Shepherd Theology cohorts are for you. There's a special preview night. If you're listening to this before May 7th, 2026, go to the link in the show notes, check out the information about Good Shepherd Theology cohorts, and we'll see you at the preview night. Good Shepherd Theology cohorts are coming back this fall, and I don't want you to miss the opportunity to sign up. This is a year-long intensive experience that allows everyone who participates to dive deeper into their relationship with God wherever they are at. We were able to run basically a pilot program all through last year, and God showed up, y'all. The Holy Spirit was on the move in powerful ways in these people's lives. And if you are someone who hears me describe this and goes, oh, I don't want homework, I don't want to go to a class, I promise you, because I saw it happen in the lives of every single person who participated in that program, that this is worth it. Give yourself the gift of experiencing cohorts for a year. If you have any questions or you're looking for more information, check out our website, gshepchurch.org/cohorts. We would love for you to experience our theology cohorts this year.
But I was not going to church and I was not immediately sold, but I did know it was something I really appreciated for Quinn. So he sent me that message that Sunday and I came. And I'm sitting in the back, just minding my own business. And I notice a woman and a man, and actually with another girl as well. They took a little peek back at me, and part of me knew I was like, oh, they're about to talk to me.
Yep.
They're about to talk to me. I was not in the mood to talk, but sure, let's do it. And so, of course, it's Janice Rubin, turns around, shakes my hand, and is like, oh, and who was with her was someone who comes to the Bible study as well, Natalie Zamora, and her and Janice's husband, Jeff Rubin. And I'm talking to them, and she invites me to come to this Bible study. I am a complete stranger to her.
Yeah.
And coming from my world, I'm used to some shady business and things that, someone just invites you over. I'm immediately red flags are going off.
For sure.
I'm worried.
For sure.
So I shake her hand. I'm like, maybe I will. She gives me her number, and I'm definitely at that exact moment. I was like, yeah, I'm not doing this.
Yeah, of course.
And
of course.
So I tell Quinn, I'm like, hey dude, this crazy woman just invited me to her house. And he's like, oh, Janice Rubin, you got to do that. You'll love it. I'm like, what are you talking about, man? He's like, the Rubins are great. You'll love them. I've known him forever. Check it out. And so I go do it. I show up to the Rubins' house and I knock on the door. No one answers.
Awesome.
And I text, and I'm like, this is weird. What is going on? She says, just go in. So here I am. No idea what's going on. A stranger has now just let me into their beautiful home.
Yeah.
And there's a guy sitting in there. This is Chris. And at this point, they invited me to a group chat. So I kind of
You were able to identify some names. Sure.
Yeah, I knew some names, and I knew Chris was talking in there about something he was going through. So I was like, yeah, why not? Let's sit down and chat, because we're the only two people here in this house. So what else am I going to do? And that was a great conversation with Chris. And we didn't agree on everything immediately right away, but it was refreshing to be in an environment where someone was just right there like that, open. And that, I accredit to Chris, the rest of that night, I was incredibly open. And I told people, hey, I don't believe in Christ. And I have gone to other places. I have gone to the Hindu temple. I've gone to the Catholic Church. I've gone to a mosque. I've read parts of the Hebrew Bible. I've, watched all this stuff about faith and religion. And, I'm here to drill you guys. Yeah. And let's get to it. Yeah. And then this dude, Max, shows up and he knows things and he's a knowledgeable guy. You should talk to him if you have questions.
That's good.
And just happened to be the topic of that night. We're all sitting out by this fire was about, who can be saved by Christ. And we talked about different philosophies. And I realized when we were having that conversation, there's nuance to all of this. And for one, I'm not going to get a concrete answer. Hey, do this, do this, do this. You're going to be good. You're perfect. And that's not what it's about, actually. It's something I learned that night too, which is what I needed to learn. Because if I still had the mindset of my mindset of religion being accomplish these couple of things and then you're good by everyone's standards. And it's not about that. So Max answered these questions I had, and I felt like I was drilling him. I feel like Max will say, "Oh, that was all easy," but I came back again. He enticed me, and I came back again. And Chris, of course, reached out to me a few times that week, more than a few times actually.
That also that also checks out.
Yes, and so I was like, "Oh, okay, let's go back." And I've maybe 5 times in the past. I don't even know how long I've been going. I've missed a Wednesday, but that is a place where I continue to learn, and I still continue to ask hard questions to this day. The other week, I sent a text about, how do I know I'm not following a false prophet? What does the Bible tell us about that? And plugging a Netflix documentary here, I watched something about a false prophet and the cult of Mormonism and some stuff, and a bad dude. And it really had me thinking, I'm like, wait, how do I know I'm not in that trap?
For sure.
So, and Max immediately was like, we're going to talk about it. And so, I get excited to ask these questions now and things, and I'm in this defensive mode where I'm trying to poke holes, and whatever. Yeah. I'm actually genuinely curious and know that the Bible does have answers. And there are knowledgeable people who can help me find it, because it's intimidating coming from nothing, right? I look at people like Good Shepherd, and you're right, I see people who have done this their whole life. They did this thing called Ignite and Fuel. Still don't really know what that means. People have explained it to me 50 times.
Yeah, it's all right. Don't worry about it.
And I felt a little like, oh man, I missed out or something. I'm not equipped.
I think what happens for a lot of people who are not a part of the family of God is there's an assumption that in order for me to become a part of this family, I have to fundamentally change all of these different things. And there are a couple of examples that I can point to of like, that behavior, that thing, that part about how you operate in the world in a church will look different the moment you feel like you're part of that church. But most things are way more gradual, and a lot of things stay the same. You asked a ton of hard questions, and I heard a pastor once describe it as you moved on from second grade questions, but you kept getting second grade answers as a way that kind of fuels some discontent about religious stuff generally. And what I love is that you found folks who probably have regularly told you, yeah, no, that's a great question. Yeah, no, that's a really hard question. Yeah, no, that's a really hard topic.
Yeah.
And have leaned in instead. Tyler Scatton is a pastor out on the West Coast. And one of the things that he described about folks who, the common phrase of deconstructing, he talked about how deconstructing makes sense when Christianity is a philosophy. Because if Christianity is a philosophy, the moment you have anything that doesn't make sense, when it is a belief system, that belief system is no longer mathematical And therefore, it makes sense that you can walk away from it and walk away from it rather quickly. But Christianity fundamentally is a relationship. And therefore, even if you don't get satisfying answers, the fact that your questions are met and people are walking with you entices you to keep moving forward in that relationship.
100%.
It would be crazy if your lovely girlfriend told you something about you and you went, I don't understand what that means. And then you didn't talk to her. Right.
Yeah.
But the relationship you have with her, when you find out new things about each other, you are naturally drawn in to more curiosity and a deeper relationship as a result. You made the decision to be someone who got baptized. And where I think that, because Alex is someone who, in case you haven't figured this out yet, dear listener, Alex is a young guy. But what I love about how you move through the world is you made a decision to get baptized, which was not at all a decision made lightly.
No.
How do you go from guy who's starting to get better questions, better responses to his questions, guy who's starting to know some people, guy who's getting texts from Chris, to deciding to get baptized? For those of you who are at Good Shepherd, the last week that we had a service in the worship center.
I really like that question. And it was gradual, but there are a couple of key moments that I look back to that were part of the decision to get baptized. And one of those was this Bible study. Sobriety was something I knew I wanted to do. And after that Good Shepherd moment, I again was trying and failing and trying and failing.
Sure.
And when I started this again, when I went to church with Quinn that Sunday, I did not go under the influence. Again, don't know why. I call it the grace of God, really. Mm-hmm. And that's a key indicator for me that I know I'm struggling with this, but for some reason I'm not at this moment.
Right.
That stirred things in me.
For sure.
A part of that too was the Bible study. I never went. I'm proud to say I never went to this Wednesday night thing under the influence. And that was something I, again, never thought. So now I'm a weekly day of sobriety.
Sure.
And then there was a moment where it was one weekend and I was sitting there. It was late night and I was sober and I was sitting there with, I had some weed and some other, drugs that the specifics don't matter, literally in front of me. And I'm sitting there. This is the moment where I'm like, all right, let's get messed up and go about the next day.
Right.
So I'm sitting there and I can't do it. I literally cannot do it. And I do not know what it is. And I'm sitting there and this was the first time I can really say in my whole life, I think there had been prior moments in my life where I had gone God, if you're really real, do this for me and I'll start believing in you. If you're really out there, get me into this college and I'll believe in you.
Sure.
But, it never works out like that, right? So
Pascal's wager is a dangerous prayer.
Yes. And I'm sitting there and I pray. I sit there and I really tried to pray and I didn't know how to pray. Praying, I now realize there is a skill to it. And something that requires practice. Mm-hmm. And I am a jumble of words and I don't even know if I said anything intelligible. I'm literally praying, eyes closed on the ground in my mom's basement. And I said, if you're really out there, man, just help me. I need help. And I really broke down that night. Yeah. It was incredibly difficult for me to say that. It's stuff that I had said in my mind, but to say it out loud in the context of a prayer was something that was incredibly powerful to me. And I think to this day that God spoke to me in a way that night, and I did not take those drugs in front of me. In fact, I actually threw them away, and I have been sober since. And I had, previously I had gone to AA and NA, if you're familiar with that, and they have a whole philosophy there as well. And step one to that is admitting to yourself, you don't have control over your addiction. And I never really was in to NA and AA. I liked it. I liked the stories. It resonated with me, but I never followed the steps.
Sure.
And when I thought back, I was like, wait a minute. I don't have control over this. Mm-hmm. I am not in control of my life. I need a higher power to help guide me. And to this day, today in church, I prayed, God, just keep nudging me in the right direction.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Keep nudging me in the right direction. And I know that what you got planned, my favorite verse, I got it, stole it from a keychain. I'm pretty sure you guys gave to kids, Jeremiah 29:11. God has a plan for me, and I need a new one because it ripped off my keychain. So if
I know where you can find them.
Okay. So I keep it in my bag though, my work bag.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
And that night was something. It was so incredibly special to me. I don't know what it was. And I have a brother. He also was struggling with a similar problem. Mm-hmm. And I woke up that morning. And somehow this is a huge part of it as well. I went to sleep. So previously, if I had tried to be sober, there was no sleeping.
Yeah, sure.
You're in withdrawal. It's horrible. And I prayed and I went to bed peacefully. And I call that a miracle. I really do.
Love that.
And the next day I'm like serious about the sobriety. I talk with my brother, I'm doing this. I cannot do this I cannot go down this path with you anymore. And we smashed a bunch of stuff. If you guys are familiar with sobriety, there's always, you got to just get rid of it at some point.
Oh yeah. There's smashing involved for sure.
Yes. It hurts, but you got to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And we did that. And my brother and I have a very interesting relationship, but I told him and he appreciated that I told him. And really at that moment is like, okay, I'm going to church this Sunday. Mm-hmm. Right. And during the Bible study, I had started to go a couple of times just to feel it out. Of course it's hard to go to a Bible study and not go to church.
Turns out.
Yes. Challenging, especially when one of the guys is like, oh, I'm preaching this Sunday. So of course, come on.
Yep.
And that was a defining moment. I called Janice the next day and I was like, hey, this is something that happened. And that's when I think of the first time I was like, what is this baptism thing? I've heard about it. I know about it. What is it? And she told me about it, and the idea of starting and cleansing myself and really truly taking the step to give myself to God was a decision that was the moment when that was a key moment right there where I did have a little bit of not fully 180, but where I was like, yeah, this is the path that I'm doing, because that night was so incredibly powerful to me. And I'm sober to this day and I'm proud. So
absolutely,
I feel great.
Man.
Right.
We're proud of you too. What I love about your baptism story specifically is it is a mile marker on a journey that you and the Holy Spirit were already on. Right. I think throughout this series, dear listener, we're talking about it, baptism and the Holy Spirit. We're going to have Max on to kind of walk through some Holy Spirit theology questions. And Elizabeth on to talk through some baptism questions, because I think we ultimately can sometimes overcomplicate baptism, even though it is a sacrament. And what I love about how this church approaches it, you're a wonderful example of this, of baptism as both a sacrament and a celebration, meaning you are clean by God and we can celebrate that. And for you and your story, that looked like getting baptized after months of a nudging in the right direction. And for other people, that looks like years of being nudged in the right direction, and then a recognition of, oh, I want to celebrate this as a public, as a birthday party, a public celebration of a thing that's been true my entire life or whatever. And I love that we make space for that in any of this context. I loved being able to be in the room when your baptism happened. And I also so appreciate of you as someone who's becoming a pillar of this church, is the idea that there's this community that you found, this community that you was the answers to some prayers you didn't know you had. You now get to help build it. My curiosity as we wrap up here is, there are folks who maybe their questions are a little bit different. Maybe the distance they have from God's a little bit different. But they are people who were in similar positions to what you were in. I'm curious whether it's those friends in your life that you still have, or a hypothetical, what would you say to Alex from a couple of years ago? What do you hope someone who is not connected to the church understands about, to use an example I said earlier, about what life to the full looks like now that you've been walking in it for the better part of a year?
The way I've seen God act in my life, and actually looking back in my life, but just specifically after getting baptized, the things I've seen him done in my life, it's immeasurable. The power that Christ has given me in the community is something to don't be afraid of it, because I know that when you're struggling with addiction and depression and anxiety, you feel alone, and you feel like you don't deserve the community. And
that's good.
What I would say to myself in the past is I'd be, hey, Alex, I know what you're feeling, man. It is hard. You are in the depths, but if you are willing to truly let your guard down, and it's hard to do. It is very hard to do. And it will not be that one Encounter Christmas 2024, 180 guards down, you're ready. It will be gradual, and it will be difficult, and it will be challenging, and it was not easy. It was not something, it requires effort. But if you're willing to let your guard down and listen and ask questions after listening, maybe before listening too, if you have them, but you will not be disappointed. I promise you that. And if you do, I'll give you a full refund. Right. So, right. But
yeah,
that's what I would say. I would say, let your guard down. It will be hard. It will not be easy. Find community and find Christ, and you will not regret it.
Thank you for listening to the Encounter Faith podcast. This podcast is a service of G. Shep Productions from Good Shepherd Lutheran Church in Naperville, Illinois. All rights reserved. If you're in the area, we'd love to meet you on a Sunday morning at our 9 a.m. or 10:45 services. At Good Shepherd, we are inviting everyone to walk together in the calling of Christ for a life of eternal impact. This podcast is produced and hosted by me, Ross Cochran. And our theme song is Wake the Earth by 1111 Worship. Thank you for listening. We'll talk again soon.